Hello, dear students. This is the Western Intellectual History course, and today we will discuss a brief introduction of the beginning of the modern age and Western thought at the very beginning of the modern age. Modernity arrived gradually. It didn't come suddenly after the Middle Ages. We didn't just go to sleep one night and then woke up in the morning to find that it's already modernity. But it took some time, or it arrived gradually. Usually between the Renaissance, that we sometimes call the early modern times, and it coincides with the late 15th and early 16th century. Between this Renaissance, the beginning of the modern age, or the early modern age, and the 19th century, during this time, Renaissance till the 19th century, a period of about 3 centuries. During this time, control of culture gradually in the Western world, of course, we are talking about the Western world, about Europe in particular, control of culture gradually became the business of the state rather than the church. You already know that in the Middle Ages, the church was the absolute authority in the Western world. Everything, all the authority was in the hands of the church. It reigned supreme. It was more important and more powerful than kings or princes or emperors, and this continued throughout the Middle Ages. But with the arrival of modernity in the late 15th and early 16th century, up till the 19th, gradually, day by day and year by year, the church became weaker and the state became stronger, so that the state by the 19th century was in control of culture and was the primary authority in the Western world. Now, how does this affect philosophy, or how does this affect thought? It affects thought because actually when we have like a civil government, this government, as we said, came to have more influence in many areas of life than it used to during the Middle Ages. And many nation states replaced the kings, who were thought to rule by divine power, with more liberal and democratic forms of government. In the Middle Ages, the kings were supposed to be like divine, like God himself was supposed to be the source of power of the king. So the absolute power of the king could not be questioned by anybody, because this king was supposed to be ruling by divine right. But this was in the Middle Ages. Modernity was different. We started having more democratic, more liberal forms of government, and we started to have new institutions such as the parliament, the educational institutions, the legal institutions, and these new institutions were not as authoritarian in their control as the medieval church had been. So, what we want to say is that intellectuals in general and philosophers or thinkers in particular, they started having more freedom to think and more freedom to express their thoughts without fearing the authority of the state, since the state has become more democratic and more liberal and allowed freedom of thought and freedom of expression. So, philosophers became more free in conducting their business, and the business of philosophers, as you know, is to speculate or to think about the big questions of human existence, the questions of ontology, the questions of metaphysics, the questions of epistemology, of all the branches that we have mentioned before. Now we will study one of the great philosophers of modernity. Actually, he is supposed to be the father of modern philosophy, or the founder of modern philosophy, the person who put the foundations of modern philosophy. And this is Rene Descartes, the 16th century philosopher. Rene Descartes is often considered the founder of modern philosophy, and it is like due to his work and due to his writings and his philosophy that he made the individual the center of interest rather than the state or the church. So there was a time when the church was the center of interest. Everything rotated about the church. Then the state, the government, became the center of interest, the government and all its institutions. But because of Descartes, nowadays the individual is supposed to be the center of interest. We always talk about human rights, the rights of the individuals, and we talk about individual identity, about freedoms, and so on. And all this goes back to Descartes. The philosophical method of Descartes is known as the Cartesian method. The word Cartesian comes, of course, from the title of the man, Descartes. So, Cartesian method, this is the philosophical method of Descartes. This method depends on rationalism. So, the philosophy of Descartes is rationalist philosophy, or it belongs to this big school of philosophy known as rationalism, which means the use of reason or the use of the mind to perceive the truth. If a philosopher is a rationalist, it means this philosopher believes that the mind is our way to perceive the truth. And of course, Descartes was one of the major rationalists. Now, usually, modern philosophy in particular is divided into two major schools. Rationalism is one of them, and the other school, empiricism, is like the other school of modern philosophy. Empiricism actually says that we do not depend on our minds to reach the truth, but we depend on our senses. We need to use our senses in order to reach the truth. So, now we have the modern ages have started, and they gradually replaced the Middle Ages. In the modern ages, the church became weaker, and the state or the government and its institutions, such as educational institutions and legal institutions and parliamentary institutions, they became more powerful. And because of this, there was an atmosphere of freedom, freedom of thought, and freedom of expression. And the philosophers took advantage of this atmosphere and started thinking freely without being afraid of any punishment as a result of their thought. One of the major philosophers of the modern times, or the father of modern philosophy, is the 16th century philosopher Rene Descartes, and his philosophical method is known as the Cartesian method, and it is a method of rationalism, which means that Descartes believed the mind or the reason to be the means that we have in order to perceive the truth. This school of rationalism is usually contrasted with another major school, which is the school of empiricism, in which empiricist philosophers, they believe that we use the senses in order to reach the truth. Descartes elaborated or developed a number of rules that we know as the Cartesian rules, and he claimed that these rules are essential for any system of thought. If you want to have systematic thought, then you need to follow the Cartesian rules. Now, when we mention the rules, we will mention the 4 rules. You will discover for yourselves that they are very logical ones, very systematic and logical, and that usually we follow them even without knowing that they are Cartesian rules. The first rule is the rule of clear and distinct ideas. He said that if you are thinking about any problem, you need to have clear and distinct ideas. You don't need to have any ambiguity or any lack of clarity. You have to be clear, your ideas have to be clear and distinct, and you need to start with this rule. Then the second rule is known as the rule of analysis, which means dividing each problem or each question into elements. If you have a problem or a question and it seems to be very complicated, you cannot tackle it as one unit. It is better to try to divide it into elements and then to deal with each of these elements. The third rule is the rule of progression from simple to complex, which means, again, if you are a philosopher, you are confronted with a number of problems, then you should start with the simple one and then the less simple or the more complex and so on, so that you are able to finish or find a solution for your problem. The fourth rule is called the rule of synthesis, which means that at the end of your thinking, at the end of the rational process that you have been following, you need to join the results in order to come with overall conclusions about your research or your essay and so on. Now, according to Descartes, these rules are necessary for any philosopher in order to reach a solution to the problem examined. And you will notice that all the rules have to do with reason. If you have a good thinking mind and you want to think in a organized manner, in a logical manner, then these rules will make sense. I need to have clear, distinct ideas. I don't need to be confused or muddled about what I am doing, and I need to analyze a complex problem into a number of elements and deal with the elements separately, and then I need to progress from the simple to the complex, and at the very end I will need to synthesize or join my results in order to reach overall conclusions. Now, one cannot mention Rene Descartes without mentioning this term, which is systematic doubt. Descartes believed that in order to construct a new philosophical system, he wanted to make a new philosophical system, like he wanted to have a revolution in philosophy. So he believed that in order to construct a new philosophical system, he decided to doubt all the systems that came before and start thinking from scratch and to follow his Cartesian rules, using his mind rather than his senses to reach the truth. So this is what he said. He said that I want to make a revolution in philosophy, to start a new philosophical system. How can I do this? I will doubt the accuracy of all the systems that came before me. Since the times of the Greeks up till the 16th century, I am going to doubt everything and start afresh from scratch. And when I start my own system, I will follow the rules that we just mentioned now: the clear, distinct ideas, the rule of analysis, the progression from simple to complex, and the rule of synthesis. He started by a famous statement, which is, I think, therefore I am. He said, I doubt everything, but there is one thing that I do not doubt, which is that I exist because I think. Since I am thinking, this means that I exist. I am here means I exist in this world. So I do not doubt my existence. I am certain that I exist. How am I certain of my existence? Because I think. Okay, so this is his important statement, very famous statement by Descartes. This statement actually refers to the fact that thought was the only immediate reality we can be certain of, and everything else should be doubted till proved otherwise. So this is what he invented, this slogan, I think therefore I am. It means that this is the only thing you can be certain of, but whatever else is found in the world, or whatever systems of philosophy are there, they should be doubted. You start by doubting them until you prove that they are correct. And all the rationalist philosophers follow this slogan, because again, remember that Descartes is a rationalist. So all the rationalist philosophers, they doubt everything except their thinking and their existence, their own existence. And then they start proving things by the use of their minds or their reason. With this, we have come to the end of our lecture on the arrival of modernity and the 16th century philosopher Rene Descartes. Thank you and good luck.